often a cruel one.
Every time you lose, you die a little bit. You die inside, a portion of you. Not all of your organs, maybe just your liver.
Pain is inevitable.
They're killing me, Whitey. They're killing me.
There was only the painful face of failure.
Okay, fellas? Hey, fellas, this is what you work all off season for. This is why you lift all them weights. This is why you do all that.
There was a fighting heart under the ribs of defeat.
Never give up, baby. Never give up.
Hey, because football season never ends. This is Intentional Grounding with your host, Pat Grothier, on Brookdale Student Radio, 90.5 The Night. Check it out.
Welcome back, everybody, to another great week here at Intentional Grounding. Thank you for joining us. As always, I'm your host, Pat Grothier, here on Brookdale Student Radio, 90.5 The Night, HD3 stream. So we'll get into it, as always. Started off with a couple of things we couldn't fit into the show. Nick Foles is getting the Eagles fans are breathing a huge sigh of relief at this one. They have to be, because Nick Foles is going to be starting again after suffering a concussion the week before this last week, Week 7 loss to Dallas. So he is medically cleared and will return to practice yesterday. Sidney Rice, bad news here, tore his ACL and will miss the remainder of the season. So now Seahawks missing their two, former Vikings, 1 and 2 over there. Now should have been the 1 and 2 going into the season in Sidney Rice and Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin now, his return is paramount to the rest of the season, and how Russell Wilson is going to do with the very few weapons he has at receiver over there. Golden Tate has to step up and not act like an idiot after what he did on Monday night against the Rams. So he's really got to start to come into more of a number one receiver role. And then Jermichael Finley saying that he does plan to play. He will not end his career after some reports came out about that, saying that he possibly was going to consider retiring after suffering I believe it was a bruised, It was a bruised spinal cord in his neck. So it sounds like a rough injury. Sounds like something that most people would consider retiring after. But Jermichael saying that, I guess he feels comfortable enough to continue playing in the NFL. So we'll start into 5 and out. Excuse me. So unfortunately making the news again, Washington cornerback Brandon Merriweather, fresh off of his 1-game suspension, which was lowered to 1 from the 2-game, for his headhunting ways, made some questionable comments the other day. And now when I first saw these, I was blown away. But I'll say the couple quotes first. I said, "I guess I just got to take people's knees out now. That's the only way. I would hate to end a guy's career over a rule, but I guess it's better because other people than me getting suspended for longer." And then the next one here, this is another one that you just have to go low now, man. You've got to end people's careers. You got to tear ACLs and mess up people's knees. You can't hit them high anymore. So now when I first got the update to my phone about this, all I saw was Brandon Merriweather saying you got to tear people's ACLs. So I was blown away when I saw it. It was just, absolutely just incredulous that he was saying this. But when I started to actually read, every quote from the interview, I'm guessing it was after a practice, possibly even after the game, you could see that what he was saying was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit facetious. It wasn't, him saying that, I'm going to go out and intentionally go after and tear people's ACLs. He's kind of saying this to open the eyes, I guess, of fans and NFL executives that when you're fining and suspending and penalizing all of these helmet-to-helmet hits, what other choice does the player have than to go for the knees? And I'm not saying I agree with that, but that's what he's saying. What I believe is that Brandon Merriweather sees a human being, and all he sees is head and knees. He doesn't realize that there's a whole lot of open body in the middle that you can hit. Now, it's a little bit different in his situation. I would understand when you're going after a running back looking like that, because they're not standing straight up for you. But when you're running after a receiver who's stretching up in the air to catch a ball, he's got a whole lot of middle ground that you can just bury your shoulder into and put a nice, clean what's the word? Fundamentally sound hit on him. So why he's saying these comments, it's ridiculous. And then he goes into stuff about what him and Brandon Marshall were going after. When Brandon Marshall said he should be out of the NFL for the way he hits, he said that Brandon Marshall, players who beat their girlfriend should be out of the NFL. Brandon Marshall, who had a couple domestic violence disputes in his past. So it's a whole mess of a situation. I hope Mike Shanahan, and if not the NFL, does something about these comments, because you can't say stuff like this. I don't care how frustrated you are. You're acting as a role model in some ways, in an NFL role, in an NFL player's role. You just can't say stuff like this. So we'll move on from that garbage. If you saw the Lions versus Cowboys game, or whatever sports network you frequent after that, you had to see Des Bryant's explosion on the sidelines. And like every basic sportscaster, sports reporter, anybody who has a Twitter account, you probably jumped to the conclusions and thought it was, prototypical immature Des Bryant being the Des Bryant that everybody thinks he is. But what he was telling, after the game to the reporters in the locker room was true. He was saying this in a very fired up way. It was purely competitive. There was no rage or anger towards Tony Romo or Jason Witten, and his claim is backed up by NFL Films, who was rolling on the sidelines during his exchange with Romo, where he was expressing, he was getting pressed on by the defenders in the secondary of Detroit, and if they kept doing it, they have no shot. He kept saying, when I'm clear, we're the best in the game at this, Tony. So when you watched that tape afterwards, you saw that what he was saying was true. He has nothing but respect for the team's leaders, and Tony Romo and Jason Witten. He says, they're basically they've helped him become, the man who he is today, who, where he grew from what he used to be in college, very immature. And a lot of the reason that people didn't go have such high expectations on him in the draft. He said that, that he's considered a little brother to Tony Romo and Jason Witten, guys like that. So when I first saw it, I'll admit, when I first saw him doing that, I was like, that's a little bit of, the Dez that everybody thought was being that Dez. So, and then I looked at it a little bit more, and I said, you know what? You don't know what he's saying. So he could be yelling, let's get back into this. We still got a lot of time. The only thing that you didn't see was the back and forth between him and Witten. That wasn't caught on audio. You did see it, of course, on video. They after the Tony Romo explosion with him on the sideline, they must have had a cameraman dedicated to Des Bryant on the sidelines. But after the Lions scored the go-ahead touchdown, there was about 12 seconds left in the game. Witten looked like he was trying to express to him that, there's still time left. We still got this. Because you never know in football, 12 seconds could mean an onside kick and one Hail Mary pass. So I think you saw a lot of frustration in Dez that, they had the game for such a long amount of time, and then they just really blew it towards the end. DeMarcus Ware, who was inactive that game, he had to kind of hold back Des Bryant when him and Jason Witten were going at it. But like he said, it was more of a competitive, heat of the moment kind of thing. There was no anger involved in it. So those reports got squashed. But speaking of some more reports that came in Sunday, Larry Fitzgerald, Cardinals wide receiver, was on the trading block. So, heavy speculation coming in on Sunday about that. Arizona general manager Steve Keim dispelled all the rumors during an interview Monday with Arizona Sports 620. He said, quote, "I can tell you two things, and I want to make this clear and simple. I have not had one conversation with another NFL team regarding a trade with Larry Fitzgerald. Number two, starting with Cardinals president Michael Bidwell on down, it is our intent for Larry to retire a Cardinal. Period." And he also said a little bit of thing afterwards I couldn't fit in the notes. He said, "If there's any gray area there, let me know and we can get that out." So he's making it very clear that they want to keep Larry Fitz for the rest of his career. They want to hang his jersey up in the rafters when he retires, rightfully so, because the guy is a phenomenal wide receiver, an even better person. I'll talk later because we got Midseason Awards coming up. We got a couple different awards, and Larry Fitz is going to be, I believe, should be a recipient of one of those awards towards the end of the year. But you got to feel bad for him because he is such a good guy and he is such a great player that, he's not going to do well with the carousel of quarterbacks they have over there. He hasn't done well since since Kurt Warner was there with him and Anquan Bolden, and they went to the Super Bowl against the Steelers. So, Adam Schefter's sources, which would be a great fantasy team name, Schefter's sources, said a trade is possible in the offseason. Obviously, nothing happened before the yesterday's trade deadline at 4 p.m., which was very anticlimactic. Horrible, very hyped up by everybody. If I was at work and it was pretty dead, so I was looking on Twitter, and the only trade was Sopa Oga. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. He was a defensive tackle for the Eagles, traded to the Patriots for a 5th-round pick. Isaac Sopaoga. That's what it sounds like, and I think that's right, but it's probably not, so I'm going to stop talking about it. And next one up here, about an hour after Miami's loss to New England. This is the last one here in 5 and Out. Miami center Mike Pouncey, former teammate and friend, college teammate and friend of Aaron Hernandez, was served a grand jury subpoena related to Hernandez's potential involvement in interstate gun trafficking and the ongoing investigation against him. The subpoena does not mean that Pouncey will be charged or has been charged with a crime, but law enforcement officials regard him as a material witness who could advance their case against Hernandez. That story was broken by Sports Illustrated just shortly after the game. So, a little interesting there, definitely. You don't see much of that. It's going to be, I'm a little interested to see where this goes. When I saw interstate gun trafficking, that kind of, opens your eyes a little bit. That, and then actually I left one out here. This is the last one in 5 and Out. After a scary hit on Bengals linebacker Ray Maluga, test came back that he suffered a concussion and that he will be sidelined for 3 to 4 weeks with an MCL sprain. The injury occurred with about 4 minutes left in the first half. Maluga filled the hole on a Chris Ivory run, and they collided pretty hard. He looked to go limp for a second or two, which was really scary, but thankfully started to move shortly after. So it's good to hear that he is going to be back in a few weeks. Absolutely was out the rest of the game. No questioning that. But it's good to see that nothing very serious happened. So we will go into this weekend in review. So we still got, KC still remaining undefeated, and Tampa Bay and Jacksonville still doing horrible and remaining winless. So we're gonna have to see. I'm gonna take a look at the schedules over the break and maybe try to formulate where Kansas City might lose, where Tampa Bay and Jacksonville might win, if ever. We could have a phenomenon this season here and have 2 winless teams, 2 0-16 teams. So that would be something. But the local games, all the recap here. We got Cincinnati absolutely throttling the Jets 49-9. New England beating Miami 27-17. Drew Brees putting up 5 touchdowns on Buffalo, them winning 35-17. Giants barely squeaking out a win against the Matt Barkley-led Philadelphia Eagles 15-7. And Oakland taking down Pittsburgh 21-18. The best game of the week, I thought I had 2 of them because I didn't watch this one. I saw the recap after, was the Detroit and the Dallas game. That was a great ending to that game. You saw the huge Calvin Johnson reception at the end that brought him down to the 1-yard line. And Matt Stafford running up to the line. If you watch the sounds of the game afterwards, you heard him yelling, clock it, clock it, clock it. So he wanted to go up and spike the ball to stop the clock. And, give him a fresh set of downs up there. Well, not a fresh set, but they'd started 2nd and 10 up there. He went up, spiked the ball, hiked the ball, and dove right over the pile. He said afterwards that, it wasn't designed. It wasn't I know my dad's going to cringe when I say it, but it wasn't a Dan Marino fake spike. He was going up there, heat of the moment. He saw that the linebackers were just standing around. You could see it, too. His linemen just stood right up. They didn't fire off at all, so he just snapped the ball, jumped right over the pile, crossed the plane, and touchdown. That was the game with 12 seconds left. So phenomenal ending to that. That was a great game. And then Denver and Washington. I saw the score in the first half, and 21-7. You're scratching your head. You're like, what is going on? You turned it on in the third, fourth quarter. You start to see Peyton mounting one hell of a comeback. 38 unanswered points in the second half. They won the game 45-21. Washington, they just there's no words on how they must have felt when they just saw their team crumbling in front of their eyes right there. RG3 went down hard on a hit, but Mike Shanahan, I believe, said he's just a little bit sore. Nothing else is really hurting. Of course, after that game and a hit like that, you're absolutely going to be sore. No big upsets of the week. I thought the only one that came very close, if you were watching the Monday night game, if you really like football and you don't mind watching any game with the St. Louis Rams or the Jaguars or anybody like that, it came close in the end. Kellen Clemens marched him down the field, backup quarterback with Sam Bradford being out, and he was very, very close to scoring a touchdown. I thought on the last set of downs, very shaky play calling. They had Zach Stacy, who is their running back there now, break over 100 yards in the game, and most of those yards came in that final drive. So the run game got them down there, and then they tried to rely on Kellen Clemens to get him in the end zone. They only ran the ball once. So that's Brian Schottenheimer being Brian Schottenheimer for you. And I feel bad for the St. Louis residents for having to suffer the wrath of him now. Seattle won that game 14-9. And then I thought the MVP was, no doubt in my mind, Calvin Johnson. 14 receptions, 329 yards, and a touchdown. He was 7 yards away from breaking the record. Andre Ellington is a notable mention, absolutely. Rookie running back over in Arizona with the Cardinals. He had 15 carries, 154 yards, and a touchdown with an 80-yard touchdown run. That one just set off the game there when they shocked everybody, shocked the world again, going back to those headlines when Kurt Warner was there and beating the Falcons, who were 2 wins this season. All right, so we will take a quick break. We'll come back in a few minutes. We got games to watch. We do have a most ridiculous story this week, power rankings as always, and we'll do the Midseason Award. We'll cut out team talk this week to do the Midseason Awards. So we'll be back in about 5. Welcome back, everybody, to Intentional Grounding here on Brookdale Student Radio, 90.5 HD3. I'm your host, Pat Grothier. We'll start back up again with games to watch coming up this next week. Tomorrow night's game, we have Cincinnati against Miami. Cincinnati 6-2 coming after that, coming off the win from the Jets. Miami lost to the Patriots. A couple local games here. We got New Orleans facing off against the Jets. New Orleans having a great start to the season, 6-1. Jets are kind of going back and forth every week. They're at 500 now, 4-4. Kansas City versus Buffalo. Kansas City's still unbeaten. So is this the week they lose? Who knows? You can see these big teams will go down from a no-name team. Not a no-name team. I'm not saying Buffalo, but they're not doing great this year with injuries at the quarterback position. Pittsburgh versus New England, another team with a little bit of, not a bad start to the year, 6-2, but a lot of people, including myself, are, I think no matter what, you saw the beginning of the season, even if they didn't get Amendola, even if you knew Gronkowski was going down, Patriots are locked to win the division almost every year with Tom Brady. That's just a fact of the matter. Saying that as a Jets fan confidently, that they win the division almost every single year. But how are they going to do in the playoffs? That's the thing, is that they are very, very beatable. And going up against some good teams in the playoffs, I don't see them lasting very long. And then that was about it, yeah. So a couple buys this week. We got Denver, Detroit, the Giants get a break, as well as Arizona, San Francisco, and Jacksonville. 49ers and the Jaguars coming off of the London game, so they get a week to rest coming back over to the States. I think the division game of the week is the Monday night game, always a classic rivalry. You got the 4-3 Bears facing off against the 5-2 Packers for a fight for the top of that division. You got Detroit mixed in there as well among the top, so very interesting in the NFC North this year. The Prove Yourself game of the week, I say it's Indianapolis versus Houston. Indy 5-2, Houston 2-5. Case Keenum's your starting quarterback again. If you can beat a division rival in the Colts, mind blanked a little bit. Coming off of the bye like that, you can catch him sleeping. You never know. And I think the game to watch of the week is the one I just said, is Chicago versus Green Bay. That's going to be a great game, in my opinion. So I say tune into that one on ESPN Monday night. We will do most ridiculous story. This one was pretty funny. Making light of a situation that could have been worse, but turned out to be not so bad. If you remember a couple weeks ago, talking about Detroit wide receiver Nate Burleson, who was driving his truck went to reach over to stop a box of pizza from falling on his seat, swerved into the median, lost control, tried to readjust, and wind up crashing his car. Suffered a broken arm, which he should be coming back from soon. So he put out on Twitter and Instagram a huge shout out to DiGiorno Pizza for a year's supply of free pizza. So DiGiorno sent him a little letter and a year's supply of vouchers for free pizza, saying that, "Hello, Nate. We hope you are feeling better after your recent car accident and are on the road to recovery. DiGiorno Pizza understands the challenges that come with carry-out and delivery pizza, so we're sending you a gift along with a year's supply of DiGiorno Pizza so you can skip carry-out." So I thought that was pretty funny, pretty cool from DiGiorno to like I said, it's nothing serious happened, so you can make a little bit of a jab at it, and I thought that was pretty funny for them. So get into power rankings. I will post it up on Twitter at @INT_grounding and on Facebook, facebook.com/intentional grounding. So I'm going to pop those up right now. They should post in a second on this very slow Brookdale network. All right, there's Twitter and there's Facebook. All right, so navigate to those websites there, whichever one is your preference, and follow along here. So we will start off, and I see it when I look at anybody else's power rankings, whether it be after I do mine and I look at NFL's or ESPN's, and just to see where they rank them, just curious. And if you look at the comments, which are usually just filled with filth and people just trying to get a rise out of other people, you see the few comments saying, the Chiefs deserve to be number one because they're their only undefeated team left. And that's not the case, because we're going to see it in the next coming weeks that when Denver and the Chiefs face off, who is the better team of the two. But I still have Denver at number one and Kansas City at number two. The score in the first half shocked a lot of people in the Denver game. But like I said, 38 unanswered points, with 31 of them coming in the fourth quarter, keeps them atop the mountain for another week, I think. Two is the Chiefs, like I said. Another close win against a mediocre team in the Browns. They scored 17 points on their top-rated defense. That's the second time that happened this season. So that's the most points scored on them so far is 17 points. That's the second time it happened to another mediocre team. I think it was either the Raiders or maybe the Titans. It's slipping my. I know it was one of those teams. Raiders might have scored 16 points on them. They can't let this early success slip away from them. I think Andy Reid's keeping them level-headed, a little bit more level-headed than some of the other undefeated teams were. It's going to be interesting. Number 3 is the Saints. They jumped up a spot in my book because just the straight domination by Drew Brees with a 5-touchdown day against the Bills. They stay in the AFC East, facing the decimated Jets secondary, and 7-1 just looks like a lock for them. I think they got the win in the bag, honestly. Number 4 is the Seahawks. Traded spots with the Saints. They dropped down a spot. I had to stop doing these. I was doing these Monday night like I usually do if I have the time, if I'm feeling, because I haven't been feeling great this last week. So if the show seems, maybe if it comes in a little bit short or whatever, I do apologize. But I had to stop doing these power rankings Monday night. Rams drove down the field and they almost won it. But if it wasn't for those last set of downs by Schottenheimer, it was a close one for the Seahawks, and they could have justifiably dropped down to the number 5 spot for the way that their defense was getting beat up in that last drive. And another week, you saw it against the Cardinals too. Russell Wilson is getting sacked like crazy. Their offensive line is just struggling, and this is a team who cap space could be a big part of it, but this is surprising in a team that before the trade deadline didn't try to bolster up that offensive line a little bit. But who knows what else is going on in the front offices of these NFL teams. Number 5 is the Colts. They stayed the same on the bye. It was a good week of rest to unwind and get their heads clear a little bit after that big win against Denver at home. Now another Sunday night game against Case Keenum Texans. So we'll see how they do. Like I said, it's the prove yourself game. So the Texans can come out. They could possibly beat them. You never know in the NFL. I say that a lot, but it's the damn truth. I mean, it's such a great sport and such a great league for that reason. I think that go to the movie title any given Sunday. You never know what can happen. Number 6 is the 49ers. They stayed the same as well. This top 10 has basically been about the same this whole year, with teams moving up and down, and then the bottom half of it is, you see some little bit of switches in like the 9 and 10 spot. But I thought the Niners, that they gave fans across the pond, one hell of a show, hanging up 42 points on the Jags. Colin Kaepernick has been pretty quiet over the air this season. another sub 200-yard game, but he did get it done on the ground. I think he ran in the first 2 touchdowns on the ground. So number 7 is Cincinnati. They jumped up a spot. Andy Dalton looked phenomenal against the Jets, picked apart the secondary with ease. It was another slow game on the ground, though, but I mean, a great defensive performance as well, holding the Jets to no offensive touchdowns, only 3 field goals, so a very good job by them. They also did take a couple hits. You had Leon Hall go out 2 weeks ago. You got Ray Maluga out 3 to 4 weeks, and now safety Taylor Mays. I don't know if there's a timeline on him yet, but I saw he was out. I think it said indefinitely, so he could be out for. I believe they put him on IR, designation to return. I think that's what it was. Number 8 is the Packers. They dropped down a spot. They won the game, but Bengals did better. I thought they were facing a better opponent than the Packers were. I'm sorry. They scored at least once every quarter versus the Vikings, so it was a great job on the offense. Rodgers and Lacey are continuing to carry the offense with all of the injuries to the other skill positions, with their wide receivers going down, and Jermichael Finley, Jordy Nelson, the main veteran receiver over there, is also helping pick up the slack a little bit. Number 9 is the Patriots. Surprising start to the game, but the Pats pulled it out as always. Tom Brady's having one of his slowest starts to the season. He's had only one 300-plus yard game and only a few 2-touchdown games. The last couple games, he's barely been over 200 yards, if he even reached it. So you can see the true hurt of not having those veteran or not even veteran, just the wide receivers that he's familiar with on the team, with 7 of his 8 receivers have been out for the whole year, of his starting receivers last year, I'm sorry. Number 10 is the Lions. They hopped up 2 spots. It was a thriller at the end. Lions pulled it out even after committing 4 turnovers. So Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson were on point Sunday, as well as Reggie Bush, who reached about 100 yards. I think he was at 92 yards and a touchdown. 11 is the Bears. One of the most seasoned and hated rivalries, between the two teams is the Bears and the Packers. That's just, one of the all-time classics. Always a great game, no matter how they're doing. But they're both above 500 this season, so really expect a good one. I mean, you do have Jay Cutler out, so that's going to bring down the intensity a little bit, I think. But Josh McCown didn't do horrible last game, but the week before the bye when they had to throw him in against the Redskins. So you never know. Number 12 is the Chargers. Rivers is in some midseason MVP conversations. We'll talk about that later. I think he's a little bit eligible for another reward, but he's putting his name up there. The Bolts are 4-3 and not looking too bad. Ryan Matthews is finally coming into his own the last few games. So now they're off to Washington to see how they can do against the team over there. 13 is the Panthers. They jumped up a big 5 spots. Them and the Cardinals right below them jumped up a lot. They haven't been facing great opponents, admittedly, but they have won the last 3 games with 30-plus points scored on offense, and they've only allowed 15 or less points on defense. So, the second spot in the NFC South this year is open for grabs, with Tampa Bay winless and the Falcons only with 2 wins. So, if they could squeak in a wild card, maybe bring them back to the playoffs since the first time since maybe Jake Delhomme was there. I think that was. I don't think, if I'm remembering rightly, I don't think Cam has got them to the playoffs yet. So 14, like I said, is the Cardinals right below them. I believe they were the biggest jump. Let me scroll down a little bit and check. Yeah, they were the biggest jump. They jumped up 7 spots from last week because they just made the Falcons look silly. They got the W after a rough 2-game skid against the better half of their division in the Seahawks and the Niners. Andre Ellington, their rookie running back, who was an honorable mention for me in the MVP for last weekend, he was looking like a young Tim Hightower. See, now I don't know if that's good. I don't know if Cardinals fans are cursing my name for saying that right now, but he had a very explosive play. And it was weird. My dad had said it was like it was a Tim Hightower there, because you just see the dreads and you see the number 3 on one side, and that's who you knew at Arizona for the last couple of years. 15 is the Ravens. They stayed put there in the middle of the pack. Coming off of a bye after that tough division loss, they got to face another opponent in the AFC North now, so they're going off to face Cleveland. I'm a broken record with it, but it's the truth. Rice needs to step it up if they're going to win these games. Number 16 is the Cowboys. Now, these is one of the biggest drops. They dropped down 5 spots from where they were, because that was a tough one at the end. The Cowboys just seemed cursed at times, like very snake bitten in these last couple of years with Romo there. Scored 30 points, won the turnover battle by 4. They didn't commit one turnover, and they still lost the game. They got to lick their wounds, head back to Arlington, and really just game plan for this next week. No, they are on the bye, actually. Let me go back. I think they're on the bye. No, they're not. Never mind. So, yeah. Number 17 is the Titans, who dropped down a spot. Jake Locker, he gets a good week of rest to come off and face the Rams. So, it's not the most exciting matchup on paper. But when looking at how these two teams have been fighting, I'd tune in for it. That should be a good game. That should be a very hard-fought game this week. Number 18 is the Jets. They dropped down 4 spots. I want to rank them so much lower. I want to put them at 30, right above the Vikings, the Buccaneers, and the Jaguars, just because I was so frustrated and disgusted after that game. But they're still a 500 team, so you got to keep them in the middle of the pack if I don't want to be too biased. The secondary is abysmal. The pass rush was non-existent, and the lack of a run game was questionable. I didn't get it. I felt like Schottenheimer, phoned in a couple plays to us and gave us the game plan for this week, because you had Chris Ivory, who did it for you on the ground last week with 34 carries, and then you only run the guy 11 times, I think it was. So it had me scratching my head the way that they went into this game. 19 is the Dolphins, who dropped down 2 spots. They let the early lead slip away from them in a scoreless second half, where they gave up 24 unanswered points to Tom Brady and the Patriots. The team crumbled where they could have beat an ailing division foe. So could have got the win, and it would have been huge for them. Whenever I see the Patriots and Dolphins facing each other, I always just wish they tie. I never can root for any one of them because I hate them both so much. I'm always just hoping for a tie. Number 20 is the Browns. They stay the same as well. It wasn't a terrible performance by them by any means. They faced a tough defensive team in Kansas City, and they scored 17 points on them. So that's something to hang your hat on. Campbell looked all right. Probably posting up the best completion percentage of a Browns quarterback. I forgot I wanted to look that up, but I haven't had a chance to. I'm saying of the season, with having, the couple guys there, he didn't do too bad. 21 is the Raiders, another team who jumped up a lot, 5 spots. You had an explosive day on the ground for Terrell Pryor, 93-yard touchdown one. It was the longest by a quarterback in history, so hats off to him on that one. He saw a hole, and he took it, and he just broke it for a long one. And Raiders are doing pretty well under him. So, like I said, I've said it in the past with the Raiders on power rankings. It's not a division-winning team, but they're making their way. They're not doing horrible. And did you see they put together a little animated thing of the defensive coordinator for the Raiders flipping off the referees and mouthing some obscenities that I'm sure you would go along with sticking up the middle finger at them. Not once, but twice. Did it, and a couple seconds afterwards, did it again. So the Raiders, not the NFL, are expected to hand down discipline to their defensive coordinator there. 22 is Buffalo. They hopped down 3 spots. Breeze is just too much to handle sometimes, and this week was no exception to that. Defense allowed 5 touchdowns thrown and a long one, too, to Kenny Stills. The shaky run game for Buffalo is going to haunt them. You got C.J. Spiller, who's been aggravated by, I think it's been his ankle. Fred Jackson had some injuries, too, but he's kind of taking the reins over there for the run game and posting up some decent numbers. But when you have E.J. Manuel out, who is supposed to be your savior this year at the quarterback position, these veteran guys in Fred Jackson, they got to put the team on their back. The defense is not doing horrible with Kiko Alonso there, the rookie linebacker. Mario Williams doing well, getting in the top 5 for sack column, but offense just isn't there. 23 is the Rams. So, the loss of Sam Bradford was evident on Monday night. Yeah, Kellen Clemens brought them close, but as I've said it probably 3 times already, and then anytime I can rip Brian Schottenheimer, I'll take that chance. Bad decisions by the play callers on that last drive lost them a close game. That was the fact of the matter. 24 is the Steelers, who stayed the same. Late surge of 15 points in the final quarter, just couldn't push them above the Raiders. It was an explosive day, not really an explosive day on offense for Pittsburgh. Not much of really of an explosive season either. They've been kind of wading in the pool of mediocrity, so they're going to stay on this very bottom half of the rankings if they continue to put forth these performances. 25 is the Philadelphia Eagles. They will stay in this bottom 10 and won't win any games if Matt Barkley continues to be at the helm. Now, like I said earlier, Nick Foles, they reported today that he will be the starting quarterback. And Chip Kelly, the new head coach coming over from Oregon, said he will continue to determine starting quarterback on a weekly basis. So, this explosive offense that came out in the opener, they've scored no offensive touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. So that's a tough one for them over there in Philadelphia. 26 is the Falcons, who went down a spot because it's just such a surprising start to the season. That you see in the Falcons in the 26th spot in power rankings in this area in most other people's power rankings, after they were in top 5 last year. If you were in a coma for this offseason and saw this, you'd be shocked. 27 rushing yards with 13 of them coming from your quarterback in one run is horrid. Steven Jackson had 11 carries for 6 yards coming off of that injury. So whether he just wasn't ready or what have you, but I mean that was at a 0.2 yard. Horrible, just horrible attempt by the run game there. I mean, it was Matt Ryan, Jaquiz Rodgers, and Steven Jackson who compiled 27 total rushing yards over a 60-minute football game. That's all you got to say. 27 is the Giants. They went up 2 spots. They were one. I said it, and I'll say it again because, I also do not like the Giants, so you'll see me maybe a little bit critical of them. But the Giants were one Mike Vick hammy away from losing that game. You barely beat the Matt Barkley-led Eagles by 8 points. It's not going to jump you in the rankings. It was a good win. It was a win they needed in the division, but it was sloppy. They're after starting the season 0-5 or 0-6. They're 2 games out of the division. So, my critical comments are coming from frustration from seeing Giants fans blow this win out of proportion. But it was a win that they needed. But any true Giants fan will agree with me. It was sloppy. If you're only winning by 8 points against that football team led by Matt Barkley. 28 is the Houston Texans. Case Keenum is still your starter, folks, over there in Houston. He's going into a tough division game versus Indy. It's going to be an interesting second half of the season for Houston, how they go from here. Matt Schaub, I saw something earlier in the week that said he's still going to try to come back for the season and play on a hurt ankle. And I'm sure everybody in Houston is saying, no, it's all right, man. You can just take a rest for the rest of the season, possibly for the rest of your career here in Houston, and just disappear. Number 29 is the Redskins. They dropped down a spot. I mean, they just got dismantled in the end of that game by Peyton Manning. They took an early lead and followed, a similar blueprint as the Colts in getting up early and trying to hold that lead, but you just can't hold off Peyton Manning. The Colts did it very well because they have a good, solid, explosive offense, and Robert Mathis putting constant pressure on Peyton, but Redskins couldn't do it. They're not on the same caliber as the Colts. 30, this bottom 3 staying the same. 30, you got the Vikings. Good special teams day. You had the Cordell Patterson, their rookie wide receiver and kick returner, ran back the 100. He brought it back. He was back in the end zone, I think, if I'm remembering right. First play of the game, ran it back for a big touchdown. Ponder didn't do as bad as Freeman, but Frazier is still making me... it's mind-boggling the decisions he's making. Still running Adrian Peterson less than 15 times a game for 3 weeks in a row. Those 3 weeks, all losses. This man ran for 2,000 yards last year. So why Leslie Frazier, the head coach over there, is doing this, it's inexcusable. At a certain point, is the GM and the owner going to look at this and say, what are you doing? This guy, Adrian Peterson, was great last year, coming off of an ACL injury. There was no stopping him with 2,000 yards. So, it's still halfway through the season. You never know. Vikings made their playoff push in the last, I think it was 6 games where they won 6 in a row. So they could turn it up. They can put Adrian Peterson, light a fire under him and see where they go from there. 31 is the Buccaneers. Another loss, and now off to face Seattle. They could remain winless possibly until St. Louis in Week 16. Or maybe not. Like I said earlier, we can have a phenomenon with 2 0-16 teams with them and the next team up, the Jaguars. They're going to be the first team. Are they going to be the first team to relocate to London, Jacksonville? Who knows? They're going to play 4 games over the next 4 seasons across the Atlantic. So, it would be a huge snub to Britain to relocate this embarrassment of a team over to London. So, I'm sure they're crossing their fingers saying, please don't bring over the Jaguars. But you never know. Roger Goodell wants it. He said that he wants a team in London. He said that he wants a team in L.A. I think putting a team in L.A. is a little bit more important than trying to make this into the International Football League, which just sounds even more pansy than the league is already turning into. But I'll get off my soapbox as usual. Midseason Awards. So we're at week 8. So we're about halfway through the season. So of course we have to, as being in football reporting and broadcasting and journalism, you got to start things early because you get bored. MVP, I think, at this point in the season, no question, Peyton Manning, quarterback of the Denver Broncos. He's first in almost every single category. Quarterback rating is 119.4. First in yards, 2,919, so he's very close to breaking 3,000. First in touchdowns, 29, and the second person below him is 19. So, I mean, that's great. 10 more touchdowns than anybody has thrown so far this season. He's second in completion percentage, 71.2. That's a great percentage. The first is Phillip Rivers, who's just ahead of him in 73.9. I believe that going back to Cordell Patterson, I just got a text from one of my sources. I believe he did tie Cromartie for the longest return for a touchdown for 109 yards. Offensive Player of the Year. Calvin Johnson, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. I know that last 329-yard performance jumped him up to the number 1 spot, but you can't put it down for that. 7 touchdowns. He's tied for 5th. First in yards per game, of course, being leader in yards, 117.3 yards per game, and he's tied for 7th with 47 receptions. Defensive Player of the Year. I got to give it up to him. Anytime I've watched a Cowboys game, Sean Lee, the linebacker over there, is all over the place. And he's also a nod for Comeback Player of the Year, having missed, I believe it was 10 games last year with an injury. He's tied for second in tackles, 81 combined tackles, 59 of those solo. Tied for first in interceptions. There's a pool of guys there that are all tied with 4 of them. He's got 174 interception yards with a touchdown. The bulk of that coming from a 74-yard touchdown run on a pick. He's first in that, and he's got 6 passes defended. So great season for him. Like I said, could rival for Comeback Player of the Year too, depending on how the rest of the season goes for this guy, who I thought was comeback, is Phillip Rivers, quarterback of the San Diego Chargers. He's not, he did a little bit better towards the beginning of the season, but his stats are still up there. He's 9th in yardage, 2,132 yards so far. Tied for 6th with touchdowns. He's got 15 touchdowns, so that's still good. First in completion percentage, like I said, 73.9, and he's second in quarterback rating. He's right below Peyton. He's got 111.1 quarterback rating, so he's doing very well over there in San Diego. Now, is he putting his name in for in the MVP hat? I don't think so, but I believe he's still doing very well to get Comeback Player of the Year from the bad performance he had last year where people were calling for his head. Offensive Rookie of the Year. 2nd-round pick to Green Bay. Eddie Lacy, running back. 13th in rushing, 446 yards. He'd missed a game, so if he would have had a game, he may have jumped up a little bit more. 3 touchdowns. The last 4 weeks, he's really, done very well. 99 yards in one game, 129 rushing yards in another, 82 rushing, 26 receiving, and then 94 rushing and 18 receiving in the last game. So, he's doing very well, and I believe that he could make a very strong running to Offensive Rookie of the Year with E.J. Manuel being out, unless he comes up and just rips up the rest of the season. And Defensive Rookie of the Year, hands down, 2nd-round linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, Kiko Alonso. Another great name like Barkevius Mingo, too. I love these names. He's tied with my midseason Defensive Player of the Year and Sean Lee in tackles. 81 combined tackles, a little bit less solo. He has 43 coming by way of his own. 1 sack for 16-yard loss. He's also tied for first with 4 interceptions. He's got 4 passes defended and 1 forced fumble that he did recover. So, you look at that, that's the main bulk of the player awards. We're halfway through the season. So anything can happen. You can have somebody else come up in Offensive Player of the Year. I thought some honorable mentions for Offensive Player of the Year. I don't want to say, this guy this guy could absolutely get it too, is Jamal Charles. Let me grab his stats because I forgot to write those down, but he has been doing excuse me, he's been doing great this year. So there's no counting him out at all. Definitely got to give credit where credit is due to some people. He's second in the league in yards to LaShawn McCoy, who's another guy who's been surprising. You see in the way that Philadelphia has been performing this season, there's a little bit of a bright spot there. LaShawn McCoy with 733 yards. Jamal Charles just 100 yards behind him with 635. He's got 6 touchdowns, so he's up there in that, Jamal. A couple fumbles, but he's still doing very well. Like I said, 6 touchdowns, 20-plus yard run, 4.2 yards average right now, coming on 153 attempts. Definitely no reason that he shouldn't be talked about as well in the Offensive Player of the Year right now. Defensive Player of the Year, a couple honorable mentions as well. Robert Mathis in Indy. He's got 11.5 sacks. He's leading the league right now. And this is a question here that a lot of people are posing. Is the sack record going to get broken this year? You have Michael Strahan, 21.5 or 22.5? If anybody watched the... one thing I always forget, because a football night airs on Tuesday, yesterday. I always forget to come in and talk about it. If you haven't seen the last couple weeks, the Michael Strahan one was great. I thought it was very good. And then the Pat Summerall one was even better. I thought it was very tugging at your heartstrings a little bit, seeing John Madden get all choked up, choking me up a little bit. Big dude like that, you don't, but they were such best friends in the booth. And it was very interesting to see the football life of Pat Summerall, and it wasn't just football, it was all through tennis and golf. So he was the voice of a lot of sports, and he just has such a deep resonating voice that I thought he did great. They did a great job on that. Michael Strahan, like I said, the sack record is 22.5. So and most of those came, I think he said those sacks he was sackless until week 4, I think he said, in the football life. So it was a great record for him to put up. And of course, everybody's go to the Brett Favre one where he laid down for him. And I'm not one of the people who were against that. He had a beeline for him. He was going to get him anyway. Who cares? He got the record. All right, give him a break. But, I mean, Mario Williams is another guy who's up there with 11. Justin Houston out of KC's got 11 sacks. Robert Quinn, who got a bunch of sacks on Monday night against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks over in St. Louis, he hopped up to 10. So is this the year we're going to see the sack record broken? Who knows? And then we'll do the last two of the Midseason Awards. I say Walter Payton Man of the Year. This is always a great award. Jason Witten got it last year. I think Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver out of the Cardinals, should get it. If you haven't seen on Twitter, I've been posting it up and retweeting other people's about what he's been doing over Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So Larry Fitzgerald, every single follower he gets on Twitter, on Instagram, there was another website too, I don't know which one it was. He's going to donate 25 cents per follower. He's going to donate, let me get the exact, okay, so 25 cents per follower on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. Oh, God, I've heard girls at work talking about Pinterest. Still have no idea what it is. And then he's also going to donate $1,000 per catch and $10,000 per touchdown. So, only a couple days left in October. So definitely go follow him, like his pages. Do whatever you got to do to get some money donated to a great cause in breast cancer awareness. And then the Coach of the Year is, I got to say it right now, Andy Reid. Who would have thought that he would have went into Kansas City and brought them to 8-0 right now? He's doing very well there. He's got little babies dressing up as him for Halloween. If you didn't see that picture, it is hysterical. I retweeted it on @INT_grounding. It is so funny, though, dress up little baby like Andy Reid. An honorable mention in this category is Sean Payton with the New Orleans Saints. Coming up after the whole, oh God, what did they call it? The Bounty Gate scandal. He's doing very well over there. They're 6-1 right now. So that's the Midseason Awards there. Like I said, it's football, so anything can change, and you never know what's going to happen. But I think at this point in the season, Peyton Manning's a lock. I don't think that's going to change at all for MVP. But the other ones, I think the only other one I think is a lock is Defensive Player of the Year, Sean Lee. People are putting Richard Sherman's name in there, but I don't even think that he's the best player in that secondary. I think it's Earl Thomas. safety over there, Earl Thomas, I mean, maybe the statistics aren't there with the big number of interceptions, but as a presence in that secondary, he's phenomenal. He's done absolutely great things over in Seattle there. So a couple minutes left. Like I said, cutout team talk. I thought I was going to run the whole hour. We'll come back next week. We're still in the NFC West. So we'll talk about the St. Louis Rams in the over in the West over there, and then we'll round it out with the Cardinals. So thank you all for joining us as always. Make sure to keep an eye on the Facebook and Twitter and everything. I always try to put up as much updates as they happen to keep you guys who may not be in the loop as much or be as obsessed as football as much as I am. So at INT_grounding is Twitter, Facebook.com/intentionalgrounding, Instagram at intentionalgrounding. I'll be posting up all the previous weeks on SoundCloud, all the shows. So if you can't listen, or if you come in halfway through, or if you just want to hear the silky sweet voice again for another time, SoundCloud.com/intentionalgrounding. Also on YouTube too. So just search it and you'll probably find it somewhere. But thank you all for joining us as always. Intentional Grounding, Brookdale 90.5 The Net. I got to cut off. I hope you guys are still listening, but I do got to cut it off. I forgot. I don't know how I forgot this. I will not be in next week. We'll be going on vacation for the next week. I may be in the week after that. I don't know how this slipped my mind. I got football on the brain. I'm forgetting about everything else. But I will not be in next week. I'll put it up. So for those people who already turned it off, I'll put it up saying that we won't be back next week. I will be doing some things, getting quite drunk, watching some football games on Sunday, hopefully. So I hope you all enjoy this week in football. We'll come back possibly the week after. We'll see how I'm feeling afterwards because I come back Tuesday. We'll see if I want to do a quick show on Wednesday. I'll try to put something together for you guys. So I'm sorry about that, but a couple weeks we'll see. All right, so have a good one.